carry on with this, to be honest. How's it going, Cara? How are you feeling after that savagery?
Hanging in there.
That's no slight on you. I'm a dumpster tier caster compared to the might of Firebat as well.
You guys are giving me a lot to live up to, which is intimidating. Because now I got all this. Everybody expects me to do well now.
It's such a Firebat response.
Man.
Yeah, it's such a Firebat response. Everyone gives him compliments, and it's like, now people will think I have to do even better.
Right.
What?
Like, I wish you guys would give me the low blows like you do Raven, and then everyone's gonna be like, oh, this Firebat guy is gonna be terrible. He's gonna make all the wrong plays, and they'll be like, oh, he actually saw something kind of good. Ah, cool. But now I have all this to live up to.
Do you want to swap? You can have my community low standards, and I'll just be a world champion.
You are both fantastic.
I agree.
You can have boobs.
You guys are great too. Thank you for that.
Thanks. Do we hug now, or
No,
how does it
not even a little bit.
What have you guys got going on over on that side of the tavern?
On this side of the tavern, we are going to be having Kuonet versus Ant to see who is going to be coming up to play against Muzzy.
It's going to be a good one. Better than yours, I bet.
Cora, I love you.
Really
You know
good.
I love you.
No, it's obviously, it's hard to beat undefeated Muzzy. In fact, nobody has up until this point in this tournament. But Ant versus Kuonet is going to be a good one nonetheless. Ant, the number 2 seed, coming into the top 8 of this tournament with one of the only full aggressive lineups in the entire tournament. Kuonet going with a much more common lineup, but he does have Firebat's favorite deck. It's Evolve Shaman.
He's got the Evolve Shaman deck, which I've been saying is kind of gimmicky, and he's proving me wrong. He's made it all the way here with the Evolve Shaman, so apparently it's a force to be reckoned with. It does have powerful tools that can help against aggro, which is why it kind of makes sense, as well as powerful tools that beat control. So it's really good at beating very aggressive lineups and very control lineups with the double Bloodlust and the Doppelgangster Evolve to help just dominate against control, as well as the Devolve, which is perfect against aggro decks as it can break their synergies and really wreak havoc against Murloc Paladins, breaking all the Murloc synergies, stopping Tyrion, and stopping Spike Ridge Steed or Blessing of Kings or any other buffs for that matter. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But the bans went out. The Warrior is banned from Kuonet, which makes sense. It's a Taunt Warrior as an aggressive lineup. The last thing you want to see is a Taunt Warrior, so it makes a lot of sense that Ant bans that out.
Absolutely does. You don't want to run all of your aggression into a bunch of taunts, even though Ant does have a couple of anti-control techs. He has a Spellbreaker in his Pirate Warrior. He has a Grimy Gadgeteer of all things. I think that's the first one we've seen in competitive play in ever.
Well,
so that'll be exciting.
Yeah, at the beginning of the expansion that had Grimy Gadgeteer, it saw a little bit of play as anti-control, but it's been a while for sure. It's definitely not a staple card, so it's really cool. Both of these players have, fairly standard archetypes of decks, but they both have very unique tech choices in them that we can see are very different from a lot of the other players. And these unique tech choices are a lot of what's made them to go so far in the tournament and why they're here.
And notably, Ant is playing the version of Aggro Druid with Bittertide Hydra and Genzo the Shark. There are a couple different variants of this deck. You can run the Finja package, but this one does seem to be working for him quite well.
Yeah, you take out the Murlocs from the Finja package, and he's included Tar Creepers, which was originally, I believe, printed to be an anti-aggro card, so it's kind of funny how well it works in an aggro deck.
You buff it up, it's got a lot of health.
Right, it's just a big base for buffing minions, and the taunt early on can act as a way to protect your minions from the opponent's hero powers or whatever their early development is, so that you can then buff more things later on. So, powerful tech choice there.
And Kuonet does have the very strong anti-aggro Doomsayers in the early game, followed by Consecration. Notably, Consecration can actually be really inefficient against aggro Druid. Obviously, it's fantastic against Living Mana on turn 5, but because the base stat line of Firefly and Bloodsail Corsair are 1-2, when you buff them, then the Consecration is actually ineffective against most of the minions.
As we can see here.
Pretty bad.
Kuonet had the ability to try and coin out a Doomsayer earlier on, but he forwent that, tried to get more value out of it, and got a little bit punished by Ant having additional minions to play and then the buffs to respond with it. And now he's left in kind of an awkward spot. You don't really want to commit this equality here, but it would be the best way that he could possibly set up for the Consecration on the following turn. Setting all these minions to 1 health. it's going to be very difficult for Ant to possibly buff them out of range.
Yeah, Ant would need 2 additional buffs in hand to be able to get them out of range of the Consecration. I would have liked the equality here. May have even gone so far as to equality coin the Doomsayer. You prevent 8 damage to face, and you do set up for the full clear. You're sacrificing your coin, obviously, so you're still 1 turn away from your end game, but it would have pulled a lot of damage away from face.
It would have definitely done that. It is still pulling damage away face now. It's able to soak up 7, so it's effectively 2 mana heal for 7, which isn't bad against aggro, but the issue is the board's going to stick around, and he's trying to milk the value he's going to get out of this equality consecrate, and Ant really does not have to commit too much more to this board to be able to kill him on the following turn. Already, with the Vicious Fledgling out there and the minions that were on board previously, the Savage Roar puts out a lot of damage, and the Dire Wolf Alpha can even threaten additional damage.
Yeah, Kuonet's going to go for Equality Coin Consecrate on 5. That's what he committed to when he kept the Equality in hand. Fledgling can very easily, put up Divine Shield, can Death Rattle into a couple of 1/1s that you can then Savage Roar to kill with after.
Right. If he hits Wind Fury here, this will be lethal. I think he has 24 damage.
Right, 12, 17, 21.
And that's Wind Fury.
Yep. Ant's not wasting any time.
Yeah, not coining out that Doomsayer for Kuonet, definitely risky. He got a little bit greedy. I think he wants to save the coin for some of these more expensive minions in his hand for sure. But when you disrespect aggro druid and you say, you know what, I'm going to give you time and I want to get more value out of my cards, they have a way of punishing you for that.
Yeah, you get very punished.
Yeah.
Not much really to say about that one. Kuonet got a little bit greedy and killed him on turn 5. That's aggro druid for you. Jade Druid also very, very good deck. If you could bring both in the same lineup, you probably would, honestly, because they're 2 of the strongest decks right now. So Ant going to go up quickly to 1-0 with the aggro druid deck. Looking pretty strong.
Quick bio on Ant, top 16 at DreamHack Austin, 2016, 65.4% win rate with Quest Rogue. He's a Tempo Storm, a Warlock expert, which a bad time to be a Warlock expert in the current metagame.
Maybe a good time. He's had a lot of downtime,
Okay.
so he's been able to prepare for this tournament.
Sure.
Now he's doing well.
Makes sense. I remember the first time I met Ant was Hammerstein Ballroom 2014.
Oof, while back.
Qualifiers for the first World Championship. He was actually there and he's been sticking to it, being around in the scene ever since then. He's had consistent ladder finishes for 3 years now. So definitely a hardworking guy.
I met Ant at DreamHack Austin last month.
Okay.
Did an escape room with him and some friends. We escaped, so clearly he's a problem solver.
You need that in Hearthstone.
He can find the lines, Firebat.
You got to find the lines to get out of those escape rooms and get out of this tournament bracket and make your way to China. So makes sense to me. But let's see if Kuonet's good at escaping from this pirate warrior.
Oof. Can you escape the fate of the face?
Yeah, and I've been really talking about Control Paladin and saying it's one of my least favorite decks of the Control set of decks. I think it's kind of the weaker link in a lot of the Control lineups that we've seen. It's like you need something that fits the theme of the rest of your Control decks, but I really like the way Kuonet's Paladin is built. He has some interesting one-ofs, and a lot of them. He has Elise in there, he has 1 Lay on Hands, 1 Spike Ridge Steed, only 1 Primordial Drake. He's got the 1 copy of Forbidden Healing, 1 Hydrologist, so not even 2 Hydrologists. He's got the 1 Gluttonous Ooze in there, and as well he's got 2 Dirty Rats. So he's got a lot of cards, especially the Dirty Rat, that work very well against the control decks that we've been seeing, the Taunt Warrior, and are also pretty good against the aggro decks. So it's just a really unique build of Paladin from him. No one else in the tournament has the same sort of control Paladin.
Sort of, yeah, hedging his bets against both heavy control and heavy aggro.
But the Doomsayer, he comes down on turn 2. Most of the time when you play a turn Doomsayer, you expect it to be able to go off, but Ant's got the Heroic Strike to shut it down. Typically a card not very good to have as Pirate Warrior in the early stages. You want it later when you're trying to burn out your opponent, but works out very well for him right here.
This coin Grimy Gadgeteer, if it would hit the Frothing Berserker, would be so fantastic. I don't know that you go for it now because you got the Bloodsail Cultist in hand, but
yeah.
Ooh, Frothing Berserker out of range of True Silver.
That's insane.
That is tempting.
He's just going to go for the Frothing Berserker now. If it is not met by a True Silver champion, then it really puts Kuonet in the worst spot possible. So it's the most aggressive line you can take. The True Silver champion will be able to come down, shutting it down, but you still have plenty of ammo to follow that up with. You could then even coin out the Arcanite Reaper, try and set up an upgrade with that on the Cultist.
Gluttonous Ooze would be a pretty sizable punish for that. Maybe Ant wouldn't want to go all in on a weapon because he knows that's in Kuonet's deck, but at the same time, you can only play so much around a tech card when your deck is as clearly defined as Pirate Warrior is.
Yeah. Developing feels kind of bad because you're developing into a True Silver, but he's going to have to swing at something anyway. So whatever he's swinging at, you want to be something that you're getting additional benefit from. And what better than Grimy Gadgeteer? You get additional benefit from it because no matter what, any of your minions are going to die. You want to save the Cultist to make sure it lands on the Arcanite Reaper. Having the 3-drop Pirate allows that to guarantee through a board clear. So even if Ant's entire board gets cleared, he could still follow the curve of play Arcanite Reaper, then the following turn play South Sea Captain, Cultist, upgrade the Arcanite Reaper. So it just fits his curve very nicely to save the Pirates like this. Second True Silver. Not a bad draw to help controlling the board here.
You've got Forbidden Healing in hand, so you know that you're probably not going to be dying anytime soon. Pretty much anything that Ant plays that hasn't been buffed by the Gadgeteer is going to die to True Silver.
Right. So the South Sea Captain would live just barely, as it is a 5/5, but any other minion in Pirate Warrior kind of just gets chopped down by True Silver. It's not a very True Silver resilient deck.
Ant has quite a few options here. You can go hyper aggressive with Arcanite and look to potentially equip South Sea and Bloodsail Cultist next turn for the guaranteed upgrade.
Yeah.
You can coin out the deckhand with it.
It plays around AoE, but unfortunately for Ant, walks into the Gluttonous Ooze and doesn't really develop anything onto the board. I think it's still the play I would make in this scenario, but the Gluttonous Ooze really gets you. And Kuonet wants to be swinging with this True Silver at something, so he doesn't feel bad if Dirty Rat pulls a minion because he wants the ability to potentially swing it at the True Silver. It's really interesting that he doesn't actually end up using the Gluttonous Ooze there. You don't really get much of a better target than an Arcanite Reaper. He is going to be able to, once this Arcanite Reaper gets upgraded, land the Gluttonous Ooze on an even bigger Arcanite Reaper. But that Consecrate seemed really strange to me. I really would have liked to see him just play the Ooze alongside the Dirty Rat and kind of just ignore the minions on board.
Yeah, I suppose he's really highly valuing
Yeah. Now there's
True Silver. You could have run the True Silver into the deckhand if you really wanted to protect Dirty Rat, but then Mortal Strike, Heroic Strike kills it. But then you still have 5 additional health and a 3/3 on board, so either way you end up in the position of board initiative.
And now he's faced in a little bit of an awkward spot because Pyro Equality doesn't actually clear anything except the Captain. So he still has to commit a True Silver swing into the Cultist. Kills half the board. The Captain, though, is buffing the Cultist, so even after Equality, the Cultist will have 2 health. So he's gonna, looks like Equality, and just use Forbidden Healing to activate? Or, no, he's just gonna swing at the Captain, not even use the Wild Pyromancer.
It's getting pretty low, goes back up to 18, however. So it's still feeling pretty safe.
He definitely has enough life total, and he's got the Primordial Drake to just solidify the game, as well as Forbidden Healing in case he takes too much damage along the way. So definitely just an outstanding position. This deck has the tech to deal with Pirate Warrior, and it drew it, so it's shaping up to be a 1-1 series.
When all goes according to plan, this matchup usually works out like this.
Ant only has 1 copy of Mortal Strike in his deck, so he's only limited to that 4 damage over the top.
He does have Spellbreaker.
Okay.
So if the Primordial Drake comes down, you Spellbreaker the Drake. You don't have the mana to Corsair and Strike in the same turn with Spellbreaker, so you're still off ever so slightly.
Yeah, and Kuonet may be respecting that Spellbreaker right now by just taking this opportunity to heal, play it extra safe. Maybe Ant has some way to use Spellbreaker and the Reaper and maybe like coin South Sea Deckhand to be enough damage to get through the Primordial Drake taunt. So being extra safe, taking the healing to try and play around that like one of potential out from Ant. Now he can solidify taunts afterward. He has plenty of life. He doesn't have to fear the Spellbreaker as much. Just playing super safe. No need to risk anything here.
I mean, we saw maybe some risky play with a Control Paladin earlier today, got seriously punished by a mage.
Yeah.
So I like that Kuonet's not taking any risks.
Even in this series earlier, we saw some risky play against the aggro druid get punished. So
Yep.
you might be a little shell-shocked about that and try and play more conservatively, which...
Learned your lesson real fast.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, you're never supposed to be results-oriented, but sometimes things like that can mess with your mind. So from this position, Ant's win condition is not face damage anymore because Kuonet's got 26 health. You're never going to be able to connect enough burn to make that happen. So he wants to win out on board control now. So that's why we see the transition from swinging the Reaper all face to actually killing the Gluttonous Ooze and trying to just solidify a board position where he can get residual minion damage. Because without landing residual minion damage, his deck's never going to find enough damage to close out the game. And that was the second Arcanite Reaper, so it's going to be hard-pressed to find enough value to really make it through everything.
Drake coming down instead of Spike Ridge Steed because through Spellbreaker, the Drake still has a higher stat line.
Makes sense. It keeps the Pirate alive, and it's also just a higher attack minion. There's only one Primordial Drake in the deck from Kuonet, so you don't have to play around a second Primordial Drake. And even if a second Primordial Drake comes out, I don't think Ant can possibly win. So you just need to take all the damage you can get wherever you can get it. So keeping the 5-2 alive instead of the 4-3 makes sense to me. Does get punished a little bit by this noble sacrifice, I guess. Might just be a coin concede.
You don't usually see him this late in the game, but
Yeah, whenever you have a coin stuck in your hand at this stage of the game, it always makes you wonder, was there some area I could have used this coin earlier on that could have given me a little bit even more of an edge?
the only real one could have been coin Grimy on 3 and try to get your frothing out of range, but it wasn't guaranteed. It was a 50-50 buff because of the cultist that Ant had drawn that same turn. Maybe the frothing could have spiraled there, but when you're facing down 2 True Silvers, Consecration, taunts, health gain, there's not much you can really do.
But that is an interesting point. The Grimy Gadgeteer coming out earlier. The next minion you play will not die to the True Silver, whether it is the cultist or the frothing. Neither would be able to get killed by the True Silver. So I think you're right. I think that's definitely an opportunity to look back at this game and say, hey, maybe did that one little play end up costing me a lot of percentage points here?
Yeah, take that, Sottle.
Leroy Jenkins killing a taunt. It's just sad.
You know what? Ant has been able to clear a lot of minions this game. I'll give it to him. Put up a fight, but it's, well, now it's really over.
He's just gonna keep healing. He doesn't even want to pressure with the Stampeding Kodos. Mentally, it kind of breaks you down a little bit when your opponent heals all the way back up to 30, so maybe that's a goal on Kuonet's mind.
Play the mind games.
Really show some dominance, but Ant doesn't really seem fazed by it too much. It seems like he's just kind of thinking.
I mean, Ant still came into game 1 and won in, 4.2 minutes, so.
True?
I'd say maybe they're about even now.
Sure, just
They're
firing
exactly
blows.
even in the series.
Exactly even in the series, both even in mental blows.
Just a best of 3 from here on out. Nothing too wild about that.
Yeah, Kuonet still has to win with his Mage and his Shaman deck. And the Evolved Shaman deck's the one I think is the sketchiest. It's the least tried and true of a deck. It's only recently started seeing play on ladder over the last week and a half. Mm-hmm. It's really kind of started rising in popularity. So it's a little experimental, but obviously it's worked well enough to get him this far. So not quite so experimental for Kuonet, I guess.
Yeah, we saw a couple of them in this tournament, similar to the list that RDU brought last week for Europe that did end up getting him to Shanghai just with the evolved mechanics. So the same base for Shaman is still very strong. Obviously, the spot removal is quite good against control. Devolve can help you against aggro combined with Maelstrom Portal. You have pretty reasonable removal across the board. So it does make sense to bring a variation of the deck, even if it may not be the most tried and true variant right now. Shaman does feel like it's kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's consistently like right on the bubble for higher win rates in tournaments, and it's not really brought by too many players still. A couple players here and there sprinkle it in as their fourth deck, but when you think about the powerhouses in the current metagame, nobody's mind immediately jumps to Shaman. And it's been consistently performing with pretty high win rates with bunches of different variants of Shaman, which is really exciting and cool to see a class that's underrepresented doing so well. And we're going to see the Shaman from Kuonet, the Evolve Shaman, up against the Pirate Warrior from Ant. And this should be Shaman favored. The Evolve Shaman has the Bloodsail Corsair patches early game to kind of match the early game of the Pirate Warrior, as well as just the Jade Claws, which is kind of like a budget Fiery War Axe. Not quite as good, but kind of keeps up with it.
Does all right.
And he's got Fireflies, which are just 1/2s that generate more 1/2s, which can really help in the early game against Pirate Warrior.
Jade Lightning lines up into Frothing.
Right, the answers all kind of pair off. And he has Maelstrom Portal for the AoE clear, as well as Devolve, just stopping pirate synergies and turning things into wisps a lot of the time.
Plus the natural Stoneclaw totem.
Yeah, the totem hero power is actually insane versus Pirate Warrior. If you can get to a point where you can get the Great Wall of Totems and just regenerate the taunt totem every single time, you can really lock Pirate Warrior's damage out, because they only have the one Mortal Strike that can kind of go over the top. Now, at the same time, Ant also has a Spellbreaker, so if you can ever get to a spot where you can Spellbreaker the taunt totem and leave it alive, then they can never re-roll the taunt totem, which is always pretty funny.
I didn't actually think of that. That's a fringe scenario, but
Sometimes it's a big deal.
it'd be pretty bad.
Now, Ant has a decision if he wants to utilize his War Axe to kill this 1/1. He's pretty much always playing the captain here, I believe. I believe he'd do it, just because the 1/1 plus the weapon on board is contesting your captain. Take that out of the way. I guess you could consider playing South Sea Deckhand to try and absorb the weapon strike, and then your captain could be protected later. You also have the ability to do nothing, just armor up, and then combine the captain and deckhand later on. But I think just the most straightforward play, be aggressive with it. And he's going to hold back the weapon swing. He really values having this Fiery War Axe up to combine with upgrade effects later on. If he picks up a Cultist, it's amazing because he does have the deckhand to complement it.
I suppose if the weapon goes into the captain, it's still, 3 mana, 3 damage, plus remove a 1/1 on board. Then you get to hold on to your weapon swing. You're going into Korkron next turn, so you'd rather they not have removal for that.
For sure. And having a weapon equipped as Pirate Warrior is incredibly valuable. Combos with so much of your deck. I mean, Kuonet had the ability to go for the Flame Tongue here if he wanted. The problem with the Flame Tongue play is it leaves him with only the Flame Tongue in play, which is just an 0/3 that does nothing. Whereas this new totem that he's created is a threat because he has the Flame Tongue still in his hand that can buff it. Where the Flame Tongue itself on the board isn't actually a threat unless other things are there. So you can see it pay off for him right now when he's able to, instead of Jade Lightning, he can produce another totem and utilize the Flame Tongue totem to clear off this Korkron elite. Just really working out for him.
2 copies of Thing from Below, both discounted at this moment in time, is going to be big trouble for Ant.
The captain is a nice pickup, though. This allows him to preserve the weapon longer so he can hold out for one of those upgrade effects and utilize the deckhand to clear off the Flame Tongue totem, not costing him any resources, right? If you spend a weapon swing on a 0/3, you have to still expend the weapon. It's as if the weapon died, kind of. Whereas if you attack it with a South Sea Deckhand, the 3/2 body of the deckhand persists afterward, so you don't actually lose anything in the process. Unless, I guess, kind of 3 damage is what you lose, but you're going to have to kill that Flame Tongue eventually anyway.
All right, so at the very least, Kuonet picked up a rather dead draw here. The Evolve, you obviously don't want to play on Thing from Below because you want minions with Taunt.
He can play 2 things from below this turn and protect his Mana Tide, right? No, just one thing from below. But Mana Tide, Hero Power Coin thing from below is pretty powerful. Or even just wait next turn, use the Jade Lightning to clear off. Yeah, he's got a very solid board presence. One of the most important things, though, as the Shaman, is trying to totem every single turn. Trying to establish a bunch of totems on board will increase the value of your Flame Tongue, decrease the cost of your things from below, as well as getting you closer to a point where you can have a taunt every single turn of the game, which is very, very powerful.
Well, if Ant had 11 mana this turn, he would have lethal.
Okay.
What now?
Unfortunately, for him, he has 6.
He does. And even more unfortunately, Kuonet has 2 taunts that will come down to prevent the 2-turn lethal.
Yeah, if Ant had the ability to just Leroy Heroic Strike, then he would be able to set Kuonet down to 4 life this turn. But he's 1 mana off being able to set up that lethal, so he needs 2 turns of no taunts coming out to be able to close this game. And there are going to be taunts that come out.
At the very least, Stoneclaw Totem would be 50% for next turn.
But he goes to try and set up the lethal for the next turn. If there is no taunt, he does win the game on the back end of this. And if there is a taunt, there are some draws that can help him try and make his way through.
Kuonet's healing options in this list. 0.
Yeah, no healing in this variation. The healing cards are kind of cut for the doppelgangsters and evolves. So they help you close out against the control decks, and the standard Shaman anti-aggro toolkit without healing is oftentimes just good enough against aggro. So it makes your deck a little bit more well-rounded.
Ant only has the 1 copy of Mortal Strike, so
I would really like to see Kuonet play 2 taunts this turn. He's only going to be going for 1, so Spellbreaker could allow the Heroic Strike to get through.
I can get both
Oh no,
down.
he's getting both down. Yeah.
They're free.
Yeah, that is how that works. When totems are played, they do discount. For some reason, I just missed that.
And Mana Tide Totem is a totem.
It is a totem.
Which is
It's got it in the
crazy.
name. Who would have thought?
draws you
That's-
closer to more taunts. But if Ant does find, an Arcanite Reaper, for instance,
He's got his work cut out for him. There are 2 Stonehill Defenders, which are going to give Kuonet each an additional taunt. So Kuonet has 4 taunts to stop Ant from being able to kill him. I don't think Reaper, even if it's drawn and then upgraded, has enough time to chop down all of these taunts before Ant just falls over.
no, looks like it's not quite going to get there. Bloodlust is going to present lethal for Kuonet next turn. And has no way to stop it, no way to kill him.
Just kind of rubbing it in, right? He's like, hey, look at all these taunts you can't beat. Here, have another taunt. Not the most helpful thing in the world in the situation, but it plays it out there to soak up some damage, buy time to where he can actually make something happen.
I like the tech choices from Ant and the Pirate Warrior, but it just feels like a lot of the time you want 2 Mortal Strikes. It seems like you get so close, you have almost enough damage over the top, and then you're not quite there because you have only access to 1 copy. I suppose Spellbreaker with a weapon equipped a lot of the time accomplishes the same goal.
Yeah, that's the kind of the switch a lot of people started making, and it's been working well for a lot of players making their way in the top ranks of Legend, having that Spellbreaker in there, being able to silence off Spike Ridge Steed and what have you, but not enough to get through the Shaman. The Shaman proving itself, a deck that I kind of doubted, and Kuonet showing us all. Turns out it's pretty good.
Tweet at you later. Told you, Firebat. Shaman's pretty good. And Kuonet now just needs to pick up a win with his mage. Ant still with the Pirate Warrior and his own secret mage, whereas Kuonet's is a Gunther Discover variant. So how does the Discover mage line up against aggro?
Well, typically it lines up okay. Not that great, not that bad. But one of the things to note about this particular Discover mage is Kuonet has cut both Cabal Couriers and replaced them with Volcanic Potions. Now, Cabal Courier is a 3-mana 2/2, which does not fight for the board very well, very slow. Whereas Volcanic Potion kills everything, which is fantastic against aggro. That's what you want to be doing. So I would say his percentage, because of his tech choices, has gone up dramatically against any of the aggressive decks, Pirate Warrior included. So I would say he's got the right tech choices for the matchup. He's got a Flame Strike and a Meteor in there, so lots of late game board clear, early game board clear with double Volcanic Potion. He's got Gluttonous Ooze in there for weapon removal. I expect it to do well against aggro.
So which one do you go in with first if you're Ant? The Pirate Warrior maybe is resilient enough against Volcanic Potion with the amount of 3 and 4 health minions you do have. The Mage in the early game also has mostly 3 health minions.
He's going to go right back in with the Pirate Warrior. Doesn't really matter too much which order. It's just about like a feeling/confidence thing because he's got to win with both of them.
Neither one is particularly great against an opening hand with Frostbolt Volcanic Potion in it. It's going to be able to shut down a lot of aggression from Ant. Weapon swings will be very important, though. You can only shut down so much damage from face.
He needs to get on board quick, build up a big board, and buff it up to a point where it's resilient against Volcanic Potion, ideally, which can be difficult to do as Pirate Warrior. One of the ways that you can kind of buff up your board to be vulnerable against Volcanic Potion is having Frothing Berserker in play, because then when your board does get Volcanic Potioned, everything dies and then just gives its attack to Frothing Berserker, and then it clubs you with everything. So it works out as kind of like a pseudo way to play around those area of effect clears.
Whew.
More clearing. Just all of the removal in the world to try and get this job done. So I'd love to see Ant just coin out the Frothing Berserker. It's kind of weird with his curve though, right? Because he does have the full suite of 4-drops at the moment where he would really like to maybe coin out one of these 4-drops. Like the Naga Corsair especially is just a really solid body and hits that 4 health breakpoint.
You could coin out the Grimy Gadgeteer. Maybe you land a buff on the Korkron, then you have a 4-mana 6-charge.
That's a pretty good one to have a buff on. Or even just landing the buff on the Frothing is amazing as well. Both get kind of vulnerable to Fireball, but forcing your opponent's hand like that is oftentimes very powerful. At the moment, his board's not really too vulnerable to Volcanic Potion because it's just a waste to Volcanic Potion 2/1/1s like this. So I think there is a very strong argument for Ant just to armor pass this turn and try and set up to coin out either the Naga Corsair or the Grimy Gadgeteer. It's a really tough call, though, because the Frothing is so much pressure.
Yep.
And you have so many like powerful top decks on the back end of the Frothing, but he is just going to end up going with the pass play. Try and set up to coin out one of these 4-drops.
If the Frothing were to come out, maybe you pull the discounted Volcanic Potion and Frostbolt. You reload on the back end, and it might be more resilient to Volcanic Potion. But waiting also accomplishes the same goal.
And Kuonet's not feeling any pressure, and he shouldn't. It's just it patches into N'Zoth's first mate, so he's just going to take his time, ping off one of the minions, relax a little bit. Now here comes this Grimy Gadgeteer, which requires an immediate answer. It's kind of a must-kill minion. If that sticks around for multiple turns, it's going to get really out of control really quick.
More importantly, it allows you to keep having tempo and initiative, because Kuonet will be forced to, if he has Frostbolt the Gadgeteer, Hero Power the Patches just to shut down the board state, and then you still have first development consistently, which is what the Pirate Warrior needs. If you ever get behind on board, if you're playing catch-up, you're in a really bad spot. You don't want to put yourself in that situation. It does land the buff on the Korkron with no immediate counter in hand for Kuonet.
It's a 6/5 charger.
Leroy who?
Yeah, that puts some damage in. And there's no answer here for Kuonet. He has the ability to answer a bunch of small minions, which a lot of times is what comes out from aggro decks. They flood the board a lot, but in this instance, the board is not being flooded. The board is being Korkroned.
This is gonna be 4 mana, 12 damage.
I'd play that card.
We pay 10 mana, 10 damage, so.
Yeah. So with just the damage Ant has in hand, is he at a point where he can justify ignoring the board and just pushing everything to face? He is ending up clearing here.
Barrier's going to
Yeah,
put
barriers.
Kuonet at 19.
Yeah, so he has to kind of control the board. If that were blocked, though, I think it might have been better just to War X to face. Double Volcanic Potion can come out to clear. You can get the Primordial Glyph in first, just investigate what's going on.
If you picked up Meteor here, maybe you save the Volcanic Potions. Free copy of Frostbolt with Firelands Portal coming out next turn. Not complaining about that. You do, however, not have Ice Block in play. You don't have any more health regeneration in hand. So you're working with limited life total here.
And you're on a clock. The weapons are swinging away. Ant can play the Naga Corsair, buffing this War Axe to allow him to get the Dread Corsair out for free. Getting the max value out of Naga Corsair this turn, and the max development of stats that he could produce this turn. Pyroblast is a really dead draw.
Firelands Frostbolt comes down. Vilespine, not the most pressure that Kuonet could have gotten out of Firelands, not the worst, I suppose. But this is still 8 represented from the weapon, 2 from the deck hand for Ant. So currently missing 6.
Yeah, he's currently missing 6. So a lot of times when you're missing that much of a chunk of damage, you still try and control the board. You still want to get some minion damage in. It's a little sketchier when your reload of minions is 2 1-drops, but you take what you can get. He's hoping that this Frothing Berserker will stick around. He has the deck hand that he holds back to try and land the Cultist on.
Arcanologist can net one of
He
the
would
2
have found
copies
the
of
6
Ice Block.
damage. Only the Leroy was the only
man.
card that would have been allowed him to do that, though. So I still think it's the correct play to go for the board control there, unless you have a hand read that your opponent has the removal for the Frothing Berserker, because you just currently don't have the damage available, and you're more likely to draw any minion in your deck instead of exactly the Leroy.
I mean, when you've already seen 2 Frostbolt, 2 Volcanic Potion, Firelands Portal,
Yeah.
I think you feel okay to develop there. So I agree. I think that was the correct play. It's just unfortunate that he did end up actually top decking the damage. Of course, the damage will still be relevant. Kuonet can Arcanologist into the block this turn, but he will need to find Alexstrasza to actually give himself some health.
Or some offensive power.
Yeah.
He's able to set up the block. Sometimes you can get that offensive Alexstrasza to close out the game before the Pirate Warrior can really do too much. The 3rd Volcanic Potion of the game, picking up a little bit of value here. Can
If
clean up these
Kuonet
minions.
doesn't Arcanologist into block, then Korkron or Heroic Strike will be lethal off the top.
Or even Mortal Strike, yeah. So 3 outs for Ant to be able to close the game, but at this point the block's up, so he's got 3 outs to be able to plop to
had it
proc
too.
the block. So now he can pop him at 3. And then he's got 2 outs to be able to repop him again. Or even then he's got Arcanite Reaper that he could get, or he's got the other War Axe that he could get, so he's got 5 outs that he could draw out of his 16 cards that would allow him to finish the game after the block's been popped. He has the decision of if he wants to pop him at 3 or 4, because killing a Whelp does actually influence how Kuonet can spend his mana to control this board. He's going to try and make it as awkward as possible for Kuonet to Alexstrasza himself. Or just do something defensive while clearing these minions. But this does remove the 2nd Fiery War Axe as an out for lethal.
Okay.
Vaporize stops a Charger, but you've already seen 2 Korkrons and a Leroy Jenkins. So, of the Pirate Warrior list, that is all of the Chargers except for deck hands, and we've seen 1 of the 2 deck hands. So potentially,
Vaporize prevents 2 damage.
it could prevent 2 damage. So yeah, ends up going with the Vaporize there.
It does put the Medivh's Valet online this turn, which means you get
That
the same
too.
Flame Strike. You ultimately just develop more on board. Save Arcanologist.
Yeah, so I think it's more he's taking it for the Valet than for its defensive properties. Ant's got to be also afraid of what the secret could be. He's got to be afraid of potentially it's Ice Barrier, and then he can't swing face with his weapon. And he has to try and set up for a Mortal Strike out. Potentially it's Mirror Entity, and then he can't develop his Dread Corsair to slow down his opponents. Now he has to think, what secrets can I afford to play around? Is there worlds where I can win if it happens to be Mirror Entity? Do I need this defensive action now, or...
Counterspell and Spellbender would mean that Heroic Strike, Mortal Strike off the top wouldn't do it. So maybe you do start swinging with the weapons. It's possible to play around everything, so what gives you the best chance to win? All right, gets to read that it's not Barrier, not Mirror Entity. So block, counterspell, spellbender, mana bind,
Vaporize.
vaporize. The one that it actually is.
Yeah. Kuonet uses his Flame Strike as aggressively as possible to try and get this Mana Worm buffed and be able to push damage with all of his minions and even ping the face.
Reaper, War Axe, Deckhand off the top,
Upgrade can set him to 1.
checks for counterspell,
Does do that as well.
sets up the 2-turn lethal if Kuonet doesn't get a way to kill or survive.
And he only has 19 damage right now, so not enough to close out the game with the Pyroblast. He's gonna need something. Alex Straza is drawn to the hand for Kuonet. He's
The
able to
best.
stabilize. He needed that or the Ice Block there, or the Arcanologist to discover the second Ice Block.
He did have a fair amount of outs, to be fair. So
he
it
had
was
3 outs. Also, Gluttonous Ooze would have worked, so 4 outs. Maybe even Frostbolt number 2 to freeze the face. But of all of those outs, Alex Straza is the most sure thing.
And that is going to do it. Kuonet is going to be meeting Muzzy in the grand finals. Kuonet, after apparently, as he says, he wasn't even going to show up today. He was 4-2 yesterday, but his friends convinced him to actually come and finish his last Swiss round today. He ended up finishing 6th in the Swiss. Now he's going to Shanghai and the grand finals of the America's Spring Playoffs. Yeah, I'd say it's been a pretty good day for him.
Yeah, when you don't expect to do well and then you end up doing well, that's pretty good. You gotta appreciate that.
I hope that he would be thanking his friends right about now, but also he's just been doing incredibly well. So great to see him coming over from the Asia Pacific region, his first foray into the Hearthstone Championship Tour in the Americas, and now he's not only secured a spot in Shanghai, but he's going up against Muzzy, who is undefeated in the grand finals, to find out who will be the America's Spring champion. Let's take a look at